The first impression that comes to our mind about any college: tall buildings, big classrooms, large lobby areas, thick books, IT labs, assignments, class tests, and projects. Nothing besides that. Every hour, minute, second spent here help us carving and shaping our persona, cultivating innovative mindsets for the challenging world. Learning is a lifelong process. Sharing knowledge, inculcating values of life, spark the innovative horizons of mind. Fun and frolic is the nature of every nook and corner here. A daily dose of thrill we are sure to get here.
Greetings to all, and welcome to our documentary screening and panel discussion on women's role in social movement, with special reference to farmers' protest. I extend a very warm welcome to our guest, Ms. Reshma, who is a research scholar in the field of criminal justice and feminist jurisprudence. She has obtained her BLLB honors degree from NULS Kochi and has obtained her master's degree from Indian Law Institute, where she is also currently pursuing her doctoral research. I would also take this opportunity to welcome Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, Dean, DME Media School, for joining us today. Professor Saxena is an accomplished media communicator, an educationist, researcher, journalist. He is a film critic as well as a political analyst. Dr. Saxena has traveled wide and long from the actual field of media industry to the world of academia. At present, he is a professor and dean at DME Media School, Director, DME Studio and Production, Chief Editor of Media Space, DME Journal of Communications, to name a few of the offices that he holds right now. It is quite unbelievable that we as a community still consider women to be a part of political process as an enigma or an anomaly. In the backdrop of farmers' protests, the role of women in pushing a social cause forward was a topic that was yet again raised in our socio-political setup. Thus, the two research centers of DME Research Cell, Research and Innovation in Media Studies, and the Center for Laws on Gender and Sexuality, joined hands to critically analyze the issue through a documentary and a working paper. Due to the onset of the second COVID wave and the lockdown following it, the documentary could not be compiled into a finished form. However, my colleagues from the media school, under the guidance of Professor Saxena, have managed to eke out some extremely insightful footage and interviews on the farmers' movement and the role of women in these protests. So today's event is just to introduce a discussion before this August gathering on the questions of femininity and politics and how the representation works. So without any further delay, let us take a look at these bites and snippets so that we may critically analyze the role of women in these social movements. So Pramod sir, if you could just please take on from here. Thank you.
पार्टिसिपेशन इस दफ़ा किसान आंदोलन में काफ़ी ज़्यादा है, क्योंकि मैं पास्ट में भी बहुत सारे किसानी आंदोलन का हिस्सा रही हूँ। उसमें कभी भी मैंने इतनी बड़ी गिनती में महिलाओं को नहीं देखा। तो इसका मुझे दो तीन चीज़ें लगती है। एक तो मैं समझती हूँ कि पिछले समय में जो पूरा वुमेन मूवमेंट का एक अपसर्ज हुआ है, जेंडर मूवमेंट का अपसर्ज हुआ है ग्लोबली, वो भी इसकी एक वजह है। महिलाएं अभी ज़्यादा असर्टिव हो गई हैं अपने काम को लेके, अपनी लेबर को लेके, क्योंकि अगर फैक्ट्स की बात करें तो हमारा अग्रेरियन वर्क फोर्स में हिंदुस्तान में नियरली 50% जो अग्रेरियन वर्क फोर्स है वो महिलाएं हैं। लेकिन उसके कॉन्ट्रेरी अगर हम लैंड ओनरशिप की बात करें तो महज 2% महिलाओं के नाम पे ज़मीन है। उसकी भी अलग अलग वजहें रहती हैं। कहीं टैक्स से बचने के लिए महिला के नाम पे ज़मीन कर दी जाती है, कहीं पे अगर देखें तो घर में क्योंकि कोई मर्द नहीं है इसलिए महिला के नाम पे ज़मीन होती है। लेकिन उस तरीके से महिलाओं का जो लेबर है उसको रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं किया जाता। जो 50% की भी हम बात कर रहे हैं, ये भी वो है जो डायरेक्ट लेबर इन्वॉल्व होती है एग्रीकल्चर में। उसके अलावा जैसे महिलाएं खेत में काम कर रहे मजदूरों के लिए घर में कई बड़ी 200 रोटियां बनाती हैं एक टाइम पे, वो कभी अग्रेरियल वर्क में कंसीडर नहीं होता काम। तो इस तरीके से महिलाओं का योगदान बहुत ज़्यादा है, लेकिन कभी उसको रिकॉग्नाइज ना स्टेट की तरफ से किया गया, ना ही कह लें कि सोसाइटी ने भी उसको इस कदर रिकॉग्नाइज किया जिस तरीके से किया जाना चाहिए था। तो उसी लिहाज से अगर देखें तो ये पहली दफ़ा है कि महिलाएं खुल के सड़कों पे उतर रही हैं और वो एज अ प्राइमरी प्रोटेस्टर सड़कों पे हैं। वो मतलब इसलिए सड़कों पे हैं क्योंकि उनके पति या उनके बाप उनके या बेटे लड़ रहे हैं, ऐसा नहीं है। वो इसलिए सड़कों पे हैं क्योंकि वो समझती हैं कि उनका भी बराबर का योगदान है किसानी के अंदर। है कि इस आंदोलन ने जो स्टीरियोटिपिकल जेंडर रोल्स थे उनको तोड़ा है। और जैसे शुरू में बहुत सारा मीडिया महिलाओं को पोर्ट्रे करने के लिए क्या दिखा रहा था कि महिलाएं रोटियां बना रही हैं, मतलब महिला के लिए एक लिमिटेड जो उनका लेंस था वो यहाँ तक सीमित था। लेकिन हमने पिछले 3 महीने में देखा है कि किस कदर महिलाएं लीडरशिप के रोल में आई हैं। बहुत सारी महिला लीडर जो पिछले 2-2, 3-3 दहाकों से काम कर रही हैं लोगों के बीच में, उन किसान लीडर, उनको पहली दफ़ा रिकॉग्निशन मिली है एज किसान लीडर। और उसके अलावा यंग महिलाएं बड़ी गिनती में हैं जो लॉजिस्टिक्स संभाल रही हैं, जो वॉलंटियर कर रही हैं, लाइब्रेरियां चला रही हैं, मतलब लंगर में हेल्प कर रही हैं, बहुत सारे काम हो रहे हैं। तो बात वही है कि इस मूवमेंट ने ये तो किया है कि जो हमारे टिपिकल जेंडर रोल्स थे उनको तोड़ा है। वही दूसरी तरफ देखो कि मर्दों के लिए किचन का काम कभी काम नहीं समझा जाता, पर्टिकुलरली इस रीजन में जहाँ पे हम बैठ के बात कर रहे हैं या जहाँ पे आंदोलन का एकदम सेंटर है। लेकिन यहाँ पे आप टिकरी में देखेंगे, जहाँ अभी हम बैठे हैं, टिकरी पे आप देखेंगे बहुत सारी ट्रॉलियों में लोग खाना बना रहे हैं और जेंट्स जो है वो अपना खाना खुद बनाते हैं। तो उनके अंदर भी एक जो लेबर का समझ है, डोमेस्टिक लेबर का समझ है, वो पैदा हुआ है। तो मुझे लगता है कि इन सब चीज़ों के चलते ये आंदोलन सिर्फ पॉलिटिकली हमें एक बदल देके जाएगा ऐसा नहीं है, बल्कि सोशली और कल्चरली भी हमारे लिए कई नए चेंजेस ये देके जाएगा।
Okay, thank you, Pramod sir, for that great snippet. Actually, it was quite insightful as well. I would invite Dr. Saxena to please share his thoughts and comment on the current issue at hand.
Thank you, Shambhavi. So when we decided to do something as part of RIM Research and Innovation in Media and the Center for Gender and Sexuality, then obviously when this discussion came that we have to do something on this, even before that, this idea was there in my mind that when this whole movement is happening, farmers movement is happening, then we should do something to highlight that. And I being a media person primarily, so this was in the sight that something should be done. But once this discussion happened, then we decided to make the documentary on this. So there were so many problems because by the time we decided to make a documentary, there were too many restrictions after 26th of January. So reaching the site was almost impossible, but still our team reached there somehow at different locations, had a lot of shooting, whatever shooting was possible, keeping in view the idea with which we were trying to shoot is getting the women working, getting the women who were performing the leadership role and not was really difficult. But somehow we managed to shoot something. We also conducted certain interviews of few women on site and off site. But then the second wave of Corona happened and the whole work stopped. So we will now try to finish the documentary in July. So that was the thing that we tried to do. And as far as this whole issue of this gender and all is concerned, I must tell you, since I mean, we are doing this as in collaboration with a center of law that I myself have done LLB and LLM, and my core area is the constitution. So, and this is one primary area, the issues gender with women and gender, which I have studied as a master's student of political science and also in different papers of law. what I look at, because particularly if we look at the whole problem from the legal perspective, normally it is believed that if a law is made on a thing which is otherwise is not possible to handle, then the problem will be solved. But I completely disagree with this. And rape law, the way the rape law has become more stringent, but at the same time there is an increase in the number of rapes. So this is a very difficult question to resolve, that whether laws can do something for women emancipation or women empowerment, or making the women free from whatever kind of problems women face within the home and outside. So, I mean, this is obviously a question which is not possible to resolve. We can debate on and on, but definitely that cannot be the only solution to this. And here comes the role of the media, wherein there is a need to sensitize the people, wherein there is a need to create awareness in the society. And that is how media, whether it's the mainstream media or the digital media, or the non-conventional media, any media we talk about, that's a primary role, that kind of sensitization need to happen in our society. If that does not happen, then obviously no change is seemingly possible. And as far as the farmers protest is concerned, now we found the major role that was played by women in this. And in a way that was the first of its kind movement. Earlier also there have been many such movements wherein women had participated in large numbers, like this anti-CEA protest is also one recent example. But this farmers movement has been one such movement wherein women were on the forefront and they were leading at various levels. So I believe this is just a beginning, but there's a long way to go. Uh, Unless this whole change in the mentality happens, which I believe is happening, no doubt. We have to be positive, we have to be optimistic on this, but then the pace is really slow, because the things are so much deep into our minds, in everybody's mind. And we have inherited all such kind of things since birth, which somewhere restricts us to accept the individuality or the identity of women. So that will take time, but then we have to follow the right course. If we feel that some more time is to take, if I mean, a lot of time this happens that some regressive things are happening. If that happens, then obviously we cannot even expect a change in near future. So there's a lot to be discussed on this issue. So I will not speak much on this, and I will let the session open to other people who have more expertise on this area. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us an introduction to this entire process. I would now invite Ms. Reshma to share her thoughts and opinion, and what does she make out of this entire situation. So the floor is open to you, Reshma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sambhavi. First and foremost, I would like to extend my sincere words of gratitude to Delhi Metropolitan Education, Dr. Ambrish Saxena, and of course to you also, Sambhavi, for having given me the opportunity to be a part of this discussion. So when I first heard about the topic itself, I found it really thought-provoking, and the bit of the documentary that I've seen now itself raised so many questions in my mind, like why are women being kept away from the societal forefront when it comes to a protest? We are living in 2021, right? So why do we have to discuss about women's role and participation in political discourses even now? So that's something, we cannot find a one-stop solution to it. We cannot discuss that or arrive at a conclusion in probably 30 minutes, because what we are discussing, the essential problem, the root cause, it lies in larger societal structures, framework, and questions, including patriarchy, misogyny, and also systemic oppression also. So what I'll be trying to do today is to raise these questions, probably create a sort of discussion, and create a comprehensive analysis as to how we see women who come forward to mark their dissent or take part in protests. So right now I'll be sharing my screen. Kindly let me know if it is visible to you guys. Okay. Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes. So gender roles in civil and social movements with special reference to farmers' protests that's happening in India. So well, in January 2021, when the Supreme Court essentially made this remark, Chief Justice Bob Day, what he pointed out was that while giving his views on farmers' protests, he commented, "Why are women and elders kept in the protest?" Now, this may just seem like a statement, but is it really as simple as that? I mean, we are comparing women to elders and children. Now, when I heard about this remark itself, the first thing that came to my mind was that if you're talking about women and children, there might be different reasons with respect to the same. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic is going on. There's a severe health crisis, and you have people protesting in the borders. That's definitely a concern for the government. But why are women being compared to the vulnerable sections like elders and children? They constitute a vulnerable section of the society with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, why is women being compared to elders and children when they come forward to mark their dissent or protest? Starting with the Constitution itself, Article 19 guarantees the right to each one of us, to mark our dissent in a peaceful manner. It gives us the right to voice our concerns. If a particular policy is, if they think it is against their general notions or it may have some impact on their future prospects, like every individual of the society, the citizen of India, I, or being a woman also, I have the, right and privilege to mark my dissent, right? So why am I being, pulled away or asked to take a step back when it comes to protests in India? The court went a step ahead and they also asked H.S. Pulka to persuade women to go back from the protest sites. Now, this is, this question is not just concern. It's also because you expect women to take a step back and, allow men to be in the protest sites. Now, comparing this farmers' protest with Shaheen Bagh protest, which was against the Citizenship Amendment Act, NPR, and NRC also. What's essentially different between two of these protests? I mean, both of these protests had women coming to the forefront and marking their dissent also. Now, what happened when it came to farmers' protest? So, one thing I found was that when in Shaheen Bagh, it was an all-women led movement which was happening, and they were sitting 24/7 in Shaheen Bagh. So when it came to farmers' protest, an equal space was being claimed by men also. Men was also there in the protest sites, raising their concerns. Now, why is it problematic when women claim, space along with men, and they decide to come up and mark their dissent? Now we are talking about a community, 98 million women, according to the 2011 census of India. 98 million women are involved in agricultural labor force. So this is something which is directly affecting them also. In with respect to something which affects them, their workhood or their livelihood, and if they decide to mark their dissent with respect to certain laws, why should they take a step back? So that's essentially something we should, discuss. Now, you're talking about women's role in gender and social movements also. I think I should just initially start with talking about the differentiation that we create in, public sphere and private sphere. Take this for instance. When we talk about women, how are women represented in the society or generally in media? If we associate women with certain words, what do we, being a layman, from talking from a layman point of view, what words do we compare a woman to? Like probably goddess or soft or docile or nurturing or supportive. And what about men? When you write about men who are, there in the protest sites, you may use words like fierce or voracious. I mean, there's an entire difference in the pedestal with which you compare a woman who's marking their dissent and a man. So this essentially comes from the notion that we live in. We expect women to be in the private sphere. I mean, in the domestic atmosphere, and involve herself or engage herself in that private sphere alone. So this is essentially the problem behind why, when you see women in the forefront leading a societal movement, you find it problematic. So the entire root cause of this problem essentially lies in, not recognizing women's agency, her right to protest, or the roots of patriarchy. Now, these are questions we cannot probably answer in 10 minutes. I mean, from the adult suffrage movement, we are now in 2021, we are still discussing women's role and political discourses, right? So this is not something which we could answer in probably 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It involves change. It requires changes coming from the larger societal framework. We as a society should change. Then only will be probably in a position to answer this question in a comprehensive manner. Now, talking about the social movements itself, like how do we classify a social movement? When we talk about the term social movement itself, what do you mean? Like it's basically a collective action. You are coming forward as a society, as a community, to react against various issues ranging from oppression or differences, which can be economic, political, social, or cultural in nature. Now, it has an organized set of constituents. Now, when we talk about social movements, do we talk about something like, gender specific differences or anything? A social movement is something where a community comes together for a cause. Now, in the social movements itself, we can essentially divide the social movement spectrum into the following categories, like women's movements for women's rights and gender justice, women-led movements for broad societal idea, social justice idea. So this is not gender specific. It covers a wide variety of areas. Now, men's movement for women rights and gender justice, mixed gender movements that do not have a women rights and justice as foundational focus, mixed gender movements with women as active leaders without a focus on gender justice. Now, mixed gender social movements with gender justice as a foundational axis. And finally, alliances between women's movements and other movements. Now, we are essentially talking about mixed gender movements or movements which are essentially not, focused on women specific issues, right? Farmers' protest is not gender specific. Farm laws affect every working farmer of the country or the general society as such because of its a larger impact. I'll not be commenting on the technicalities of farm laws, but still, so it's a larger, broad spectrum that's there in front of us, and we are, protesting against it. After the Nirbhaya incident, or when any rape happens in the country, we see that it's always the women coming forward and starting a protest or starting a movement. Following the Nirbhaya unfortunate incident of Nirbhaya case and protest, we had the rape law amendment happening in the country. Stringent rape laws were brought forth. So we had women coming forth and protesting against it. So why are women, sidelined to protest against movements that are directly gender specific only? Why cannot they raise their voice when it comes to aspects which cover a wide spectrum of areas or larger societal movements? So this also essentially lies in the idea that women are not in a position to probably lead a mass movement farmers protest when men also claim an equal space. So essentially, the root cause lies there. Now, when Chief Justice of India, Sir Bobde, made this comment also, we have certain key issues that root from this particular question. It's just one statement that he made, but well, that statement gives rise to many questions that we have to ponder on. Firstly, are protest sites exclusively reserved for men? Why cannot women claim equal spaces? And second thing, this I commented during the introduction phase also. What is the rationale behind putting women on same pedestal like old people and children who might have health related complications? And the third one, the remark, of course, it has a sort of concerned nature, but it also roots in the savior complex. Like you think women are a gender that requires protection, that requires care, and so you cannot put them in a situation which is difficult to handle. So why so? Why, I mean, if men can be at the protest site, if they can battle COVID-19, and if they can be there protesting, then why not women? So that's also a question that we need to discuss, right? Now, this comment also roots on the idea that women have tolerance level which are lesser when compared to man. Like, what logic does that tell us? And finally, doesn't women have the right to mark their dissent and carry out protests? Why can't she be given an equal opportunity? Now, with the public sphere and private sphere discussion, which I suggested earlier also, So the feminist theories, it essentially suggests that men dominate the public sphere, whereas women are essentially related to the private sphere. Like when we comment about women, or when we think about women, we often associate her with terms like docile or supporting or nurturing or caring. So this is how we picturize women. So that's the largest societal perception with respect to the gender. Now, public sphere and private sphere classification, it ensures oppression of women and makes it difficult for women as a gender to raise issues that affect them largely. With respect to this, gender domains also, men had dominated a political process in so many generations. Famous feminist Kate Millett, while comparing the discussion between public sphere, private sphere, and women participation in political discourse, she also commented that this largely affects the power structure and its relationship. This classification and categorizing women to be people who should be there in the private sphere alone had historically affected her participation in the, or coming towards the public sphere also, and her being a part of a larger political discourse. Now moving on to the farmers protest itself, like I commented earlier, 98 million, like it's not a small number, 98 million women according to 2011 census are involved in the agricultural labor force of India. So this is something which directly affects them. It's a direct issue that affects their labor workforce, future prospects, everything. It directly affects their livelihood. So you are questioning their right to lead a protest or mark dissent against something which they believe would have effect on their future prospects or livelihood. And when women actively forms a part of agricultural workforce, why are they being denied the opportunity to take the central stage in protest? I mean, as a lawyer and as a woman also, I really don't get the logic behind that. Now, while commenting, while commenting on the remarks made by CJI Bobde while giving while dealing with the case, Samyukta Kisan Morcha, they responded by saying that they should not be asked to go home. It condemned the statement which was made by the court, and it also recognized that it is a movement of women also, as much as it is a men's movement. It's a women's movement also. So they should also be given the equal opportunity to be at the protest site, marking their dissent and raising their voices. Nobody really has the right to, ask them to take a step back and not lead the protest. As I was saying earlier, also, what was the essential difference that was there between Shaheen Bagh protest and farmers protest? I think one point would be that men were also claiming equal spaces when it when it come to the farmers protest, and Shaheen Bagh, it was essentially a more organized sort of a women's movement. In farmers protest, when it came, it was the larger societal perception was that it was men leading the protest, and why should women essentially take a central stage? So that question essentially roots in patriarchy and systemic oppression that women as a gender had been facing since ages. Now, another question that we need to look into is that, is this the first time women are taking central stage in protest? I mean, if we are saying yes, then we'll not be understanding history in a proper manner. There were numerous, I cannot count it, numerous protests which were led by women and which indeed turned out a success also. So it's not like women cannot take a central stage and lead protests. There are examples in front of us where women, took initiative, came to the societal forefront, and decided to take a stand according to what they believe in. So moving into some of these movements. Firstly, it comes the Chipko movement. It happened in 1963, and it was also a women-led movement. Women actively participated in it and brought forth a change also. Anti-nuclear protest in Tamil Nadu with respect to the nuclear power plant that was happening in Kudankulam. It was a women-led protest largely. And the Bhopal gas disaster, 1984. After the disaster, women came forward to take a stand and ask for compensation, ensure that the victims get a sufficient compensation also. And the role played by women was actually recognized internationally. In 2004, the Goldman Environmental Prize was awarded to Rashida and Champa Devi, also recognizing their role in bringing forth a change. And Narmada Dam protest, which happened in 1985, Medha Patkar, she received the 1991 Swedish Right to Livelihood Award. She shared it with Baba Amte. So this was also a protest wherein women had to take a central stage, express their opinion, and it did result in a positive change also. Now, the anti-erect movement, which was led by Vardhaneni Rosamma in 1992, it was against alcoholism. It was also a largely women-led movement. Now, the Lakshmi Agarwal's acid attack movement, the AFSPA protest, which was spearheaded by Irom Sharmila, the Munnar plantation strike. This is probably a recent one in 2018. In Munnar plantation strike also, it was women who were sitting, blocking roads, sitting and protesting against the huge wage disparity that existed between men and women. And this also resulted in a positive change where government was forced to intervene and ensure that things will be sorted out and the gender disparity would be done away with up to an extent. So we have all these examples in front of us where women were active participants taking the central stage. Now, in this situation, we cannot really say that women do not have the capability or capacity to lead movements. And if we really think so, that question or that notion essentially lies where in patriarchy, and we thinking that women are not capable as a gender to lead forth a certain protest. That's what I wanted to add. And now I think we'll move on to the discussion session.
Thank you, Reshma. That was great. I mean, there were a couple of points that you raised were extremely interesting, and let's take them up in the open discussion that we'll have. We are going to have next. But before going towards that, we have a couple of more snippets that we'd like to share with all of you, so that we can have a much more deeper insight as to what the farmers' protest exactly was, and how the women were involved in that protest. So.
With this Ugraha group, which is protesting at the Tikri border. So they have been involved in educating, motivating farmers, especially women, for many years now. And therefore they have a very large following and cadre among farmers and especially women in very large areas of Punjab. So that is what is probably responsible for this.
By participating.
Yes, not only caste and gender barriers, but also religion barriers. We have found that these farmers' protests everywhere, including in Western UP, where communal riots took place in Muzaffarnagar in 2013, the farmers' protests have succeeded in bridging the divide, the communal divide, the caste divide, the gender divide. It's a very remarkable movement that is taking place and very, very heartening.
Women in
I think one of the things that the farmers' protests have shown is how women are now at the forefront of everything, including organizing, participating, supplying food and so on. They are involved across the board in everything. I hope that they will be role models. I am sure that they will certainly, the participation of women in everything and the visibility of the women in these farmers' protests will certainly help in increasing the participation of women across the country in all kinds of roles which are traditionally dominated by men.
What according to you?
No, I think this will have a significant impact in terms of encouraging more and more women to come to the forefront, to lead, to be involved in roles which traditionally are dominated by males, etc. So it will break those stereotypes. It will help in breaking those stereotypes.
Positive side, women were expected to do that in the past also. You know, during the time of Chaudhry Charan Singh, when the protesting farmers were being consolidated in groups, women were completely missing out. Even at that time, almost 82% of the labor force was women. And almost 50% plus were women farmers. Notwithstanding the fact that at the ground level, while 83% of male members of the families got access to land, less than 2% women got access to land. And this actually prevented the consolidation of women farmers during that time. Now, over the 80s and the 90s, things were pretty low for women for various reasons, you know, violence that was going on, lawlessness. And the worst was, you know, the kind of access to governance. And with the 33% reservation that came in, they were more effective in the South than on this side of the country. Finally, now that they have come out, I think a battle has been achieved. It's almost 50 decades long battle, and coming out in this manner that they are saying that they are actually you know, contesting for their rights is a very positive beginning for women farmers. A very positive development, because wherever women are more in numbers, they are the ones who are defying class, caste, and many other divisiveness of male-dominated governance. So, you know, the coming out of women is also leveling of the society. So we must welcome that change. Yeah, on one side we can say they are building up the new identity. In any case, that identity was always there with them, but they are asserting now, which they should have done earlier, but for whatever reasons, whatever provoked them now is an extreme, you know, pushing against the wall. And I think that there is always a cause for a beginning, and at the right time also, because the kind of marketization which is happening now would put women to, you know, a new kind of a challenge. They have still to struggle with the challenges that they had faced in the past, and they have still to overcome a number of battles coming out of the past system, and they have not been able to do that because of the glass ceiling. But with the coming of marketization through the 3 laws that have been imposed upon them without even consulting them, the best thing could have been that, you know, these laws should have come down to the panchayats, and opinion of panchayats should have been taken, because they are the people at the core of the whole debate, and they are the ones who've been marginalized. So I think women are there for a very, very rightful cause, and very well supported by almost every woman in this country. A large number of researchers who have been going to the villages to study the gender roles of women farmers, they have been sharing that women are driving tractors, threshers, machines, you know, they're preparing fodder through, you know, new technology and all that. But they've been invisible, because, you know, ultimately what you see is that a man is standing in the market who's selling all the stuff prepared by women who are invisible. But now at least they have come on the surface and the roles are being asserted. So, you know, on one side we can say that they are asserting their identity, but on the other side we can also say that they have rediscovered or revisiting their identities. Immense. They are visible on television, social media, and those who can actually see them across the gateways to the capital city. You know, something that one never thought that at least a metropolis child would never think of a woman being so educated in farming, so technologically trained, so assertive, can speak so well, flawless expression, and such creativity on so many fronts. Why is this all going undiscovered? I'm sure once this movement is over, a large number of filmmakers, a large number of media people are going to go back to these terrains of undiscovered creativity. And so I think this is perfect timing also for them to assert themselves.
Happened. This has just been a trigger to bring women out and to bring their role to the fore. Women, as we all know, contribute almost 96% of their time in agriculture and their efforts, from sowing to winnowing to harvesting to non-mechanized farm work. Women have been at the forefront, and 85% of the women in the rural areas work in the farmland. This was going to happen sooner than later. This has only precipitated matters and I would say given speed to it, because men had started moving. There was a lot of out migration. Women, the land holdings that the families have are not enough to support the families. So women were sharing large part of the burden of the agriculture work, along with their already existing burden of looking after the homes and children. But I think that this policy of the government, when the minimum support price, which was like the lifeline when you have small holdings, was in danger, and the men started moving out, and the government was not listening. So I think that, and when we talk about the farmer women of Punjab or Haryana, they are very strong women, because they have been handling this entire agriculture burden on their own shoulders. So it was but natural that they would come and stand next to their sons, next to their husbands, next to their father-in-laws, and say that we are with you.
So this means there are economic reasons.
The lack of empathy and sympathy from the government precipitated this, because for women their land is like most precious. That is what gives them food security. What they sow, what they toil on that land is what gives them the flexibility and helps them come above poverty line. Now, if you take that very thing away from them, it's like taking your child away from you, or taking something which is so precious to you away from you. How can you stay at home? And we have seen that women have protested, whether it was the Chipko Andolan, whether it was, there are a number of such stories in the history of India where women have taken the lead and have protected what is dear to them. And I think this was that stage where, when they felt that their lands were at risk, when their food security was at risk, when their lives were at risk, and their only source of income, because they are traditional farmers. Even though when we talk about a farmer, only the image of a man comes up in our mind, but the women are the backbone of the entire agriculture economy. And we are an agrarian based economy, and if you threaten that, then how can they stay quiet?
But then if we talk about,
I have a couple of questions to ask from Professor Saxena and Reshma, and then maybe we can open the floor for general discussion from the audience as well. So first, I'd like to ask Professor Saxena, because he's there, he's been on the field, he knows how the things at ground level work. So I would like to ask you, sir, that what are the problems that the media persons face when they are out to cover such?
As far as the media people facing the problem is concerned, obviously, there have been problems in the coverage of the media issues and all, particularly when you are going to the field and you don't understand the women's issue. That's the first problem. Then also the kind of support that should be available on the ground, that support is not available. But then obviously the things have started changing particularly since the advent of TV. Whatever bad things have happened after this TV news, but then some good things have happened, that there is larger participation of women in the news workforce. Earlier, that was not. I mean, till 15 years or 20 years back, there were hardly 1, 2%, 3% women. I'm not sure about the exact statistic, but there should not have been more than this. When I started my career as a journalist way back 30, 35 years back, there used to be no women in our newsroom. But then all this credit goes to television, that more and more women started joining the profession of journalism. Though that remains confined to metropolitan cities and big cities, but still, that has percolated even to the down, wherein even in small cities you will find, if not more, at least a few women in the entire setup of news. So that has changed the scenario, and also the people's understanding of media has also changed. In our time, again, good or bad, in 80s and 90s, whatever was coming in media at that time used to be particularly print media. Everybody was finding it very sacrosanct and was accepting whatever was being delivered to them. But now it is, people have started even challenging what is being told to them. So there is a more participation of the people in the whole process that happens as far as media communication is concerned or media delivery is concerned. So that has also changed the scenario. So inside the media organization, outside the media organizations, all these things have changed. Education among the women have changed. The assertiveness among the women has also changed. And since otherwise also, I believe personally, if there is more participation of women, any walk of life, be it media, be it education, be it the political process, be it the public policy making and governance, if there is more participation of women, then obviously sooner or later the things will change.
Thank you, sir. That was really, I mean, representation in media is a big deal. I mean, this is something that we also have to maybe have a separate discussion upon. But thank you for giving us such wonderful opinion on that. Another question that I had from you was that media plays an important role in creation of an image. So, what opinion do you have upon that? I mean, how that happens, and what maybe ethical questions that have to be taken into consideration while such image building is being done by media?
See, in media, there has always been one major issue. I mean, and that remains there. That was there 30 years, even today. The journalists who joined media as a profession, whether it's print or television, uh, they themselves are not properly sensitized on issues not only related to women, on issues related to women, on issues related to children, on issues related to other vulnerable sections of the society. And this has always been a major problem. This is even today a major problem. And if I can tell you, I mean, if you go to any particularly television organization, even today, people are from such backgrounds. I'm not saying that very categorically for the reason that it might sound a bias against some regions or against some castes. But what happens, the people who are mostly in the profession of journalism, they are not that much educated on these issues. They are not that much sensitized, and that's a major roadblock, in fact, because as far as the leadership is concerned, and this very strange, even in Delhi, if you look at any television news channels, there are hardly any women in the leadership positions. Editors are always men. So one, that women are not in the leadership. to the people, the men who are in the central position, in the leadership position, they do not have the right kind of sensitivity to address the women's issue. So these are the very major and the serious issues. The latest example, you can find what happened in this Sushant Singh Rajput's coverage that happened. The kind of language that was being used, I forgot the name of that girl who was implicated in the whole story. The way she was painted in the media, that was horrible. And there were women anchors who were doing this. So this is another side of the story. Even women, if they join the profession of journalism, but gradually they start thinking like men. They are colleagues in a news channel, and they, I mean, had a different kind of perspective, different kind of perception about the women, who are friendly to some actor, who might be girlfriend to somebody, who might be taking some drug. So they are, such women are painted as if they are characterless, they are polluting the whole society, and this is being done by the women journalists, by women anchors on the screen. So there are, I mean, multiple shades of this problem. So that is what I can say on this.
Thank you, sir. That's true. I mean, women acting like men, that's a very, very important point that you've raised. And it's not just in media. I think Reshma would agree with me. This is the same case when we talk about judiciary and the legal world, the entire universe as well. So as feminists, I mean, this is something, it's a very major question that we have to pay attention to. So coming to you, Reshma, and you've raised a beautiful point about the private and the public divide, actually. And just a comment that I'm making over here, and I would love to have your opinion on that, that even when we were looking at the coverage of the farmers' protest in the media, like all of the media channels, in fact, not just specifically focusing on one, they were being shown still, you know, like that image of a provider was still being maintained, right? That wo log khana bana rahe hain, and you know, they're looking after people who are present in those protests. So that image of a mother was still being maintained, as if any other image is going to come out, then that entire women's protest is going to fail. All right. So do you think that even in this public sphere of protest, we are still sticking with that mindset that let's keep that pious, vulnerable, yet a provider image intact, and then maybe work upon these social movements? So what do you want to say about that?
Of course, Amphavi, I mean, I totally agree with the point that you just made. Because when you consider the gender dichotomy that exists between, you know, public sphere and private sphere also, we expect that men come to the societal forefront and take action, and we expect women to be in the private sphere. So that had always been like that. I mean, still in 2021, it's kind of, you know, devastating that we are having this discussion about women's participation in political discourse, right? So that image of women is always there. Like I commented also, when what is the general societal perception and media's perception also? When it comes to women, it's always like, you know, you relate them to terms like goddess, mother, nurturing, providing, supporting, soft, docile. So these are the kind of words you use when you describe a women. So that doesn't really accept her agency, right? Now, if I talking from the judicial perspective, also in 2018 we had the right to privacy judgment, K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India. I mean, that was like an historic judgment with respect to recognizing bodily autonomy, bodily agency, and the judgment touched on many beautiful aspects also. And imagine from the same court that recognized bodily autonomy and bodily agency itself came the comments that, you know, women cannot claim spaces in protest, or they cannot be a part of protest. So that's one thing we really need to address. Even in the judiciary, the general patriarchal setup, or the systemic oppression is always there. It had always been there. There were judgments which try to bring forth a change, or try to bring forth societal, try to bring certain changes in societal perceptions. But the problem which I feel is that you give a judgment that recognizes gender equality, and recognizes LGBTQ rights, or probably right to privacy, bodily autonomy, agency. You recognize all these through certain judgments, and when when you make other judgments, when you make some passing remarks also, that inbuilt patriarchy or that inbuilt scenario wherein you treat women as second class citizens, that's always there, that's just coming up. And the question is, how do we address it, how do we sort it out? So like Dr. Ambarish Saxena so pointed out also, it essentially exists in the societal basis. Change has to be brought from within. Like few lawyers or few administrators or few people sitting and making a law cannot really bring forth a change, right? So it essentially needs to come from within. A larger societal framework needs to be changed. While answering your question, Sambhavi, on the public sphere and private sphere dichotomy and distinction also. So there's this statement which was made by very famous feminist Simone de Beauvoir. So while analyzing the distinction between public sphere and private sphere, and women always being excluded to the private sphere, he very beautifully analyzes this as masculine is routinely portrayed as the positive, or it's regarded as the norm, whereas feminine is depicted as inferior. I mean, of course, that is the basic idea from the certain remarks come from, right? We are not ready to accept the fact that women can also claim public spaces. We as a society get really uncomfortable when women claim spaces. And the portrayal of women in these protests also, Saxena sir had already pointed it out. But I just remembered during the Shaheen Bagh protest, 101-year-old Bilkis Banu, she was protesting with all her vigor, and she was really there in the forefront. And how did media portray her? I mean, the mother, she's given birth to so many children, she's taking care of her family, and I mean, not just her, but almost all the women who participated in Shaheen Bagh protest also. The media portrayed them as, okay, fine, they are doing all their jobs and still they are coming, and being a part of protest. It was a 24/7 protest. So women take turns. They have jobs to do at home. So they go back, do their work, and then come back. So it's always that they can be at the protest. The general perception is that they can be at the protest, they can be at the societal forefront. But firstly, what do you have to do? Finish all the household work, do your domestic work, the role that you are historically vested with, and then you can come to the societal forefront. So this is a general notion that exists in the society, and if the change has to be brought forth, it really needs to come from inside.
I think we've exceeded our time limit a little bit. I'm just going to ask two more questions, and it's going to be a general question. So maybe you can answer first, and then Amrish sir, you can also chip in if you want to. There is this, this threat that is always associated with women, that and this is the news that is currently also coming before us, that a lot of sexual harassment took place at these the sites of the protest, and it is for this reason that we are trying to protect women, that we are going to avoid such acts of violence that might be committed upon women in these protest sites. Do you think that all of this is coming from a kind of an external idea that is maligning the protest, or should we be mindful of such things when any social movement is happening? I mean, what do you think about that? We can start maybe with you, Amrish sir, and then move on to Reshma.
See, my take on this a little bit different, because I believe that all crime against women can be handled only by doing two things. One, we have to keep education of women on the top priority. We have to educate each and every woman in the society, whatever kind of campaign is done. I mean, the kind of efforts which normally the governments do in making buildings or in making statutes. So more than that is required for educating the women. So that's all resources should be put into that. One. Two, every woman should be put in a position wherein she is always doing a job. I mean, which will giving her the economic independence. A lot of problems happen in our country because the women mostly are dependent on somebody for their shelter, for their food, for their economic well-being and all. This has to be changed. So first education and then both the things have to be done simultaneously. Three, women have to be given space in political in political participation, in governance. And for that, the long pending thing, we have to have this 33% reservation for women in assemblies, in parliament. Once we do this, then the scenario will start changing. Once the reign is in the hands of the women, then all this crime will, I will not say that this will vanish completely, but there will be a setback to that mindset wherein any crime can be committed against the woman who is weak and who cannot protect herself. Because when the leadership is in the hands of the political leadership will be in the hands of the women, then obviously this, I do not know how much crime reduction will be there, but definitely it will be reduced. You just look at the scenario outside. It's a manly world. There is no chief minister in the entire country except Mamata Banerjee. There is no governor except one or two. This UP governor, this lady from Gujarat, maybe one or two, not more than that. As far as the ministers in the central government, in the state government is concerned, I do not remember the exact statistic. It was maybe 2%, 3%, 4%, not more than that. If women are nowhere uh, calling the shot, then how the scenario will change? Whatever men will decide, that will happen, and men will mostly will go scot-free if you commit a crime against a woman. If you are in a top position, if you are a minister, if you are a high court or the Supreme Court judge, or any top position you have, then you can easily save yourself after committing any kind of crime that you wish to commit against the women. So this is not an easy thing. We have to have a very concrete measures to do this. Wishing that simply making a provision of hanging for the crime of rape will not change the situation. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. And I completely agree with you that all of these questions cannot have just a juridical or a legal answer. We have to have, representation is something which we have to look forward towards. There cannot be any politics of any sorts without the question of reservation at least being addressed. And of course, representation, more bigger problem that there is. So Reshma, again, the same question comes upon you. Do you think that this is just a malignment policy that these places of protest is very, very dangerous for women, and women should not go out to protest because anything can happen to you in these protest sites? So do you think that this is a valid argument that is being provided by people to us, to the feminine beings in this world?
Yes, Sambhavi, answering to that question, first of all, I don't think this is just some argument to malign the entire protest or sort. I really think that there might be incidents, but however, I stick to the fact that this is in no way, you cannot raise it as an argument to prevent women from going to the societal forefront or leading a protest or participating in a protest to mark their dissent. So these are basically, arguments to prevent them or restrict the gender from being at the societal forefront. If you think that such spaces are unsafe for women, what should you do? You should make such spaces equally open to women also. It's not like you prevent them from going out. Just answering to this question itself, there was this movement. I don't know if you're familiar of this Pinjara Tod. Okay, so across the NLUs, IITs in India also, I think in many colleges still you have this rule wherein women has to get into their hostels by 8 o'clock in the evening. Men has an extended curfew of 12 o'clock. Now, of course, the reason where it comes from itself, it is that it's unsafe for women to be there. Well, I am a person who believes that this should be no reason to have separate rules for two particular genders, because it essentially roots in the idea of a patriarchy. and you are considering them as a special gender and creating special rules or laws for them, thereby restricting their freedom. So I mean, I am a part of an NGO, Legal Collective for Students' Rights. Okay, so there was this case in Kerala. I hail from Kerala, basically, where girls in a college, in a law college, it was a law college in Kerala, they were not allowed to use phone in their campuses, only girls. Okay, and they were not able to use internet, laptop, nothing. So this was a special rule that was just for them. And the reason behind this rule was that it's not safe for women, because they might get exploited, and they might get bad name to their colleges and everything. So this is no reason to prevent anybody from exercising their personal liberty. And in this judgment, it's called Fahima Shirin versus State of Kerala. The Kerala High Court very beautifully had noted down why women also have equal rights in spaces, including campuses. If you have to have separate, or if you are concerned about the safety of women that much, then consider having equal timings for men also. Do not create a specialized timing for other people. So the basis of this argument also roots from that. If you think that spaces are unsafe for women, protest sites are unsafe for women, then do something to make it equally safer for women also. You cannot claim our spaces by saying that it's not safe, so don't go out. That's not the way out. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Reshma. You've exceeded a lot of our time today, so I'm going to make the call of stopping this discussion over here right now. If the audience has any questions, they can forward it to us. We'll be sharing our email IDs. The research center of media department, the Center for Laws on Gender and Sexuality, will be sharing our emails with you, so you can send us your questions over there. Reshma, if you don't mind, maybe you can share your email and the students can ask certain questions from you, so we can take this discussion even outside this very limited time period that we have today. So thank you so much. I now invite Dr. Sushmita Bala. She is the head of the department of DME Media School, to give her put a conclusion to this entire process today.
Thank you, Shambhavi. I'm happy to see that finally there is some progress. Things appear changing. हम लोग ने बहुत सारी बात की according to this topic and all. So women's had always been in backyard. Now they have come in the forefront. This farmer movement, हम लोगों ने farmers movement की बहुत ज़्यादा बात की और बहुत सारे aspects भी उसमें cover किए. Not only cooking and all, जैसे आपने बताया library and बहुत सारी चीजें उन्होंने handle की. तो उसमें मैंने ये जो footage देखे उसमें कुछ schools और बच्चों के classes and all ये भी cover किया गया था. तो this is very important कि अगर हम हर aspects को cover कर रहे हैं तो gradually women's आगे आ रही हैं, forefront पे आ रही हैं, but not all fields. ये हमने फार्मर प्रोटेस्ट को लेके, फार्मर मूवमेंट्स को लेके बहुत सारी बातें कर ली, लेकिन अगर हम बात करें इन अदर फील्ड्स, नॉट ओनली इन एजुकेशन, एजुकेशन इज गुड, एजुकेशन में बहुत सारी फीमेल्स हैं, जस्ट फॉर कि उनको लगता है कि इट्स कंफर्टेबल फॉर अस, मॉर्निंग 9 to 5 जॉब है, बट इन मीडिया इंडस्ट्री if they are working night shift or day shift or field work, this is very difficult for everybody. And in this period, COVID period, this was very difficult. One my student suffering 2 times. First time COVID हुआ, तब उसको अटैक हुआ, and second इस दौरान फिर उसको दोबारा उसको अटैक हुआ. तो this is very difficult to everybody. But जो भी है, this has affected the mindset of people. This has compelled the media to change its perspective. Let us hope things will change. And we women will get overdue space in society. So thank you for this session. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your words. Just on a lighter note, this is something which my mother says, that internet sometimes acts like a man. It doesn't let you speak. So I think that's something which happened with us today here. So moving on from that, thank you everybody for being here. I'll move on to the vote of thanks. It's a very, very important and a very position of responsibility to actually extend the vote of thanks. So I would take this time, and the first, people that I have to address over here is the people who have gone to the field, collected these bits. They have, and it was a raging time of COVID, and yet, they were going there. A lot of things they had faced. So Sumantra sir, Mohit sir, Yogendra sir, and thank you so much for, working. I would call you like Corona warriors for ourselves as well. Thank you so much for collecting these tidbits. And hopefully we'll have a good documentary with us by the end of this year, at least July tak ho jayega, but thank you so much for all of that. Then my center members, especially Shreya, and thank you so much for being there and supporting us. And you have introduced Reshma to us, and it was a wonderful experience having you here, Reshma. And I hope we can collaborate further as well. And all the students, participants who have helped out in making the documentary and in our working paper as well. All the audience sitting over here. And this vote of thanks cannot be completed if I do not include Professor Ambrish Saxena over here. It has been his vision, his support to us that we have been able to, finally make this thing happen. A big thank you to Dr. Isha Jaswal. She's the research head of our college. She's not present over here, but this was again her suggestion that we just have some sort of a panel discussion upon whatever work that we have done up until now. So thank you, everyone. Till the date we again meet together and have a good discussion again. Thank you, everyone.
DME has embraced digital paradigm shift by adopting technology-based learning. Unlike other colleges, we adopted a two-step strategy. In step 1, teachers would be preparing the videos, students would be watching them. In step 2, the student would be coming to the tutorial, clarifying the doubts, making the presentations, and discuss with the teacher.
At DME, we have invested in the best in the class academic ERP, which allows us to have a 360-degree robust communication amongst all the stakeholders, students and faculty members.
DME's virtual learning mechanism is no less than real-time classroom teaching,
wherein the students are provided the pool of e-learning resources in the form of PPTs, video lectures and online classes in a very student-friendly environment.
There is no need of mental blocks. Online teaching is as effective and interesting as offline teaching. Let the students enjoy this new mode of education.
In DME, we believe in quality education. We take care of our students. We want to see them happy.
Mental and emotional health are one of the most challenging issues of present times. DME Mentoring Cell takes care of that. Not just this, we go beyond academic curriculum to instill the most important employability skills in our students.